Hey superheroes, this is Alexander Bear, and I'd like to welcome you to the Modern Day Superhero Show.
What is your mission? What's your purpose here? Why do I get out of bed every day?
What I really wanted to do was to change the face of medicine one patient at a time.
That moment I connected that dot, that peace would come from sharing my own truth, sharing my own journey. That's when, the shift really happened for me.
The Modern Day Superhero Show.
Hey everyone, I'm really excited to welcome you to my new podcast, The Modern Day Superhero Show, where we discuss discovering purpose through optimizing health. So modern day superhero is anyone who is living in line with their life's purpose and affecting profound positive change in their community. On this show, I interview these types of folks, asking them questions such as what their purpose is, how they found their life's purpose, tips they have for others who are struggling to find their life's purpose, and other related questions. I also ask specific questions in regard to their particular field of expertise. Many of the guests on the show come from backgrounds related to health. They may be medical doctors, nutrition researchers, acupuncturists, yoga instructors, and the like. These are the majority of guests, although some may come from other fields. What is of utmost importance, and the reason I bring them on the show, is because they have a really helpful, inspiring message to share in regard to finding purpose in life. As I mentioned, the show is largely based around optimizing health as well. Topics on the show include formulating a proper diet, the most effective exercise protocols, how to avoid environmental toxins and hazards, how to calm the mind, and so forth. They're generally based around the categories of food and nutrition, movement and exercise, meditation, healing, sustainability, and service. The reason for this is I personally found great purpose in life through optimizing my health, and I'm on a mission to understand universal truths in regard to living a life full of vitality. In my own experience, I came to realize that through using tools which help to optimize health, you invariably begin to simultaneously discover your purpose in life. At least that's been my experience. For example, in using meditation to calm the mind, or participating in a vision quest ceremony, or spending quiet time in nature, you allow the body and mind to relax, and what tends to come through is a connection to your true self. And you begin to gain insight into what makes you happy and feel fulfilled. And if you sit long enough, you start to see what practical steps you can take to start moving on that path. Additionally, it's been my experience that the body serves as a vessel, or even a temple, that we must take care of properly to really lead the life that we desire. If we're in constant pain because we don't eat well, don't exercise, live in a toxic environment, and so forth, it's really hard to calm the mind enough to see what your purpose is. With that being said, I tend to interview folks who have a high level of expertise in some field related to health, whether it's mental health, physical health, emotional health, or spiritual health. For instance, I have Dr. Michael Bauersmidt, president of the American College for Advancement in Medicine, come on and discuss how to optimize your environment to reduce exposure to toxins, and also how to eliminate toxins that are already stored in your body. I have Dr. Dominic D'Agostino, a researcher that develops nutrition-based therapies for the metabolic management of neurological diseases and cancer. He comes on and discusses how to formulate a diet that reduces inflammation, that optimizes sports performance, and can even potentially cure cancer. But I do also interview folks who may have no real expertise in a health-related field, just people I've met who I find inspiring. For instance, my friend Donald, who traveled the entire world, literally the whole thing, even though he lived below the poverty line. My high school biology teacher, who inspired thousands of students to pursue the sciences and set them up for successful research ventures. So it's my purpose, essentially, to be the healthiest version of myself, the world's most proficient healer, and share all I learn with anyone who's willing to listen. It's been my experience that we often live in unnecessary suffering. I know I did for many, many years, but I found a solution to escape from these cycles of suffering and really live a life of fulfillment, a life full of vitality and abundance. And luckily, the formula to do this is relatively simple. There are certain steps to take on this path, and I'll be the first to admit I haven't mastered them all, and I'm still working on achieving this state of self-actualization. But I've walked enough steps and met enough masters that I'm qualified, I think, to begin sharing this message. So here's what I found. In order to live a life full of health and vitality, you must understand your purpose, live your purpose, and share that purpose with others. That's really it. So how to find your life's purpose? The most effective tool I've found is figuring out a way to quiet the mind, as I mentioned before. Still the mind enough so that you can get in touch with your intuition, your subconscious, your higher power, God, whatever you want to call it. To still the mind, I've tried many different methods over the years. The most effective tools I found are Vipassana meditation, dream journaling, regular journaling, and spending time in nature. It's been my experience that in our society, it can be incredibly hard to find time to do this, and our environments aren't really conducive to such self-discovery. But it's possible, and this podcast and the corresponding website, moderndaysuperhero.com, will explain how anyone can begin this process. And as I mentioned previously, sometimes it's not as simple as just finding a quiet place and meditating. Some folks may not be able to meditate for a variety of reasons. There could be a high degree of heavy metal toxicity, which literally doesn't allow the brain to function properly. Someone may be really sensitive to electromagnetic fields and not be able to concentrate because of this. Some may not have access to healthy foods, which are conducive to feeling energetic and give the ability to focus. There are a whole number of factors here, and my goal is to become aware of them all and make steps personally to optimize each area and then teach that to you all. I don't really plan to become a master in each area, but definitely gain proficiency. So going back to that food example, if you eat a bunch of pancakes and syrup, how do you usually feel? I mean, if you eat organic, local eggs and veggies, how different do you feel as compared to eating a bunch of sugar? There's definitely a noticeable difference, but I personally run up against the wall of the expense of healthy living, or the expense of joining a gym to exercise, the expense of seeing a highly qualified doctor. I've lived below the poverty line for the past 4 years, so everything I've come to learn and suggest tends not to be a burden on the wallet, and if so, I've started to figure out ways to be able to gain access to the tools required to heal. This is what I'm sharing on the podcast and the corresponding website. Well, that's kind of a lot. So let's take a step back. Basically, I'm here to say I believe anyone can live a life of strong purpose and optimal health, no matter what obstacles have been thrown their way. So here's my story. I suffered with depression and high anxiety the majority of my life. I've lost the balance of my mind many, many times. I felt suicidal. I've spent months crying and wishing things were different. I've been pretty low, but now I feel healed, no longer depressed, but vibrant and excited for life. My mind is clear and stable, and I serve as a shining example to those I work with and teach. I teach them lessons of patience and persistence, things I never thought I'd be doing in my wildest dreams. And the whole journey began, well, probably when I was born 26 years ago, or perhaps many lifetimes before that, but for the sake of brevity, let's say it began at the age of 14. I had moderate acne and wanted it gone. I mean, like any other teenager would. So growing up in the age of Google searches, I typed in something like, how to cure acne. I was very fortunate to come across Dr. Mercola's website, where I was taught that diet directly affected inflammation in the body, including skin conditions like acne. I was given simple protocols to follow, such as drinking only water and cutting out processed foods like sugars and grains. I implemented this advice, and my skin began to clear up. I also noticed I felt better in general, and my endurance during sports performance and sports events improved. It was really profound to me. I had no idea that what you ate affected how you felt. I was never taught that, even by doctors. So this really inspired me. I wondered what else I didn't know or had been misinformed about. I started reading about all topics related to health, nutrition, exercise, environmental medicine, different medical philosophies, all kinds of stuff. I was hooked. As I said, I was 14 at that time and spent the next few years really learning this health stuff. I still suffered with depression and had many ups and downs, but the journey had begun nonetheless. When I turned 18, I decided I wanted to be a doctor and went to the University of South Florida to study biomedical science. I did all the good things I did good things pre-med students would do. My grades were good. I shadowed doctors. I volunteered in hospitals and cancer centers. I conducted research at the medical college, the whole nine. Despite all this, I felt unfulfilled. Nothing really made sense to me. For instance, I volunteered in the nutrition department at a cancer center, and my duty was to give and sell inpatients and people visiting the hospital candy and soda. I watched people with such low white blood cell counts from their cancer treatments that they had to wrap themselves in 10 blankets to stay warm. I saw a man fall over from severe muscle cramps because of his treatment. It was saddening to say the least. And in school, I looked around. Everyone, including myself, studying pre-med, taking science classes, was just so unhealthy. We stayed up studying for days, not eating well, people taking Adderall and drinking massive amounts of coffee. It was terrible. And then my father was diagnosed with cholangiocarcinoma, or bile duct cancer, at the beginning of my sophomore year. So I really wasn't doing well. There was great stress during that time. I still had a glimmer of purpose, which I discovered at the age of 14. It was still inside me. And all this frustration and depression and confusion led me to found a student group at USF called the Complementary Alternative and Naturopathic Medicine Student Organization. And through founding it, I felt a strong sense of purpose again. I organized events such as shamanism lectures, mindfulness and meditation seminars, acupuncture workshops, and other related things like that. And it was awesome. We usually had good turnouts, and the events were filled with folks with such a genuine interest in healing. I met some of my best friends there through the student group. So fast forward to the end of my junior year, which is when my father died. I took no time to heal from this loss and pushed through school. When my dad died, I spent a day to be with my family, then took the train back to school to finish my final exams for that semester. Then I started summer semester and finished up my senior year. I was definitely hurt and not really sure what to do. I couldn't focus enough to apply to medical school and decided to travel to India instead when I graduated, as my friend Manas had invited me there. I was in India for about 2.5 months, and of course, being in India, I had a spiritual awakening. Long story short, I was on a mountain called Shambhara Peak, and the mountain told me to return home to my family and to study medicine. So I went home and studied for the MCAT. I took the test a couple months after I was studying, maybe 5 months later, and I bombed it. I realized the whole time I was home, I was really helping myself to heal. I practiced a lot of yoga. I was running on the beach, barefoot a lot, spending time in the forest, reading spiritual texts by Osho, Eckhart Tolle, and others. I wasn't really surprised at my score, because all the time I was supposed to be studying, I was pretty much just outdoors and reflecting on things. So I took some time to reflect on my score, and I decided that I wanted to start helping people sooner than later. So I began working as a personal trainer and yoga instructor at the end, or in the summer of 2013. I learned a lot from this experience. When I was with clients, I felt like I acted more as a therapist than as a trainer. Many clients of mine would get off work and just vent to me as we were going through strength training or stretching routines. And I started to become unbalanced and realize I didn't really have adequate training to help these people as much as they should be helped. I decided to stop working in personal training and teaching yoga in the summer of 2014 and decided to travel instead. So I attended my first 10-day Vipassana meditation course at this time, and then spent 3 months in Mexico whitewater rafting, eating mangoes, and writing. During that time, I had a remote educational technology job, but the grant funding got cut while I was in Mexico, so I was out of work and decided to come back home. And that's when things got really interesting. While I was at home, I felt a strong obligation to help my mom and family due to an impending financial crisis. So I stayed at home for some time and helped to the best of my ability, which wasn't very well at all. I had a great deal of internal conflict and was going through great strife. That's another long story, but the conclusion of it is I ended up having no place to live, about $50 left to my name, and a broken heart. It was the most depressed, lonely, and hopeless I had ever felt in my life. It was ironic in a sense because I had felt deep peace perhaps a year or two before that when I was practicing yoga regularly, eating well and exercising a lot, had a great group of friends, good job, and just generally was enjoying life. My life had turned literally 180 degrees. I reflected for it. So I reflected for a bit and realized the only way I was going to get out of the hell I was in was to work, to put my head down and work. So I got a job at Panera Bread and spent a few months there washing dishes and taking out garbage, keeping my head down, hoping no one would see me. I mean, it was pretty bad. From there, I moved to Georgia and began working as an environmental educator, wrangling kids all day, holding juvenile alligators between my fingers and pine snakes around my neck. It was a pretty wild job. I spent a few months there. I was still pretty miserable, although some hope had begun to return towards the end of my stint there. And then I moved to King, North Carolina, and began working for a YMCA summer camp. And I was finally able to overcome the depression completely there. My duty was to teach teenagers leadership skills, and also I guided them on backpacking trips on the Appalachian Trail. I was able to start practicing yoga again and found serenity in the mountains. So from there, I moved to Brevard, North Carolina, just outside of Asheville, and began working as a wilderness therapy field guide, which is what I currently do, besides speaking into microphones and writing blogs and such. Now my job is to teach folks in a primary rehabilitation treatment center for drug and alcohol addiction how to find some peace and self-love within themselves, and how to use nature and a 12-step program as a tool to help them in their initial phase of recovery. It's been a pretty wild journey, but the point of it all is I overcame severe depression and hopelessness, and now I'm living a life of abundance and freedom. And I'm not special. I'm no different than you. Anyone can go from dejection to hope and pure joy. I've seen it in myself. I see it at my job all the time. I mean, I work with people who used to shoot heroin and have been clean for 7 years and now are teaching other folks how to love themselves and how to recover. I'm not a doctor, a therapist, and at this point I hold no master's or doctoral degrees, just a bachelor's degree in biomedical science. All I have is it's a general interest in understanding universal truth and living a life full of peace and harmony and sharing it with others. I've been fortunate enough to have really unique experiences related to volunteer work, medical research, and working in positions in which I really got to know people on a deep level, many of whom were suffering from debilitating mental processes. It has all provided an interesting perspective on some common themes we all suffer with, along with how to break through the suffering. I mean, I've personally experienced severe back pain, crippling depression. I lost my father, all my grandparents. I lived in poverty for many years. Just been through some tough stuff, but I'm here to tell you it gets better. And not only that, there's a way to see why you experience great suffering, and rather than dwell on it, use your experiences as a tool to help others heal and to help others in their journeys of recovery. So that's what the podcast and my website are all about, essentially inspiring hope and giving you simple, effective tools for optimizing health and finding purpose in life. Again, it's been my experience that if you can find purpose and share with people, live a life of service without expecting anything in return, you will be fulfilled. We live in such a beautiful time with abundance of information. I mean, you can go to a Vipassana meditation center and learn for free the technique Buddha used to become enlightened. You can go on iTunes U or listen to podcasts where the world's leading experts in any number of fields are featured and share their information for free. I mean, you can travel the entire world like my friend for not much money at all. It's really a beautiful time to live. I firmly believe that each of us can find our purpose and share it. And if we do that, the world will be like a really illuminated place. So in conclusion, this podcast and my site are all about breaking through old conditioning and habit patterns, seeing life for what it is and being fulfilled. I think in this time, the reality is available to most everyone. Thank you for listening to this introductory podcast. My first 3 episodes feature Dr. Michael Bauerschmidt, president of the American College for Advancement in Medicine. He and I discuss how to prevent accumulation of toxins in the body and how to detoxify the body when it is in a state of dysfunction. The second episode, I interviewed Daniel Neary, owner of For You Fitness, the only personal training studio in the United States utilizing electrical muscle stimulation and exercise routines. We discussed formulating a proper exercise and nutrition program. He's been featured on TV many times, most notably the Doctor's TV show. In the third episode, I interviewed Dr. Dominic D'Agostino, a researcher that develops nutrition-based therapies for the metabolic management of neurological diseases and cancer. We discussed the ketogenic diet in depth. Later episodes will include talks with yoga instructors, acupuncturists, energetic medicine practitioners, drug and alcohol addiction specialists, and many more. So until the end of 2016, I'll release one episode per week on Fridays at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Beginning in 2017, I'll release 2 episodes per week, Tuesdays and Fridays at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And in general, the shows will run about an hour in length. Before we go, I'd like to thank everyone who inspired me to create this podcast, all of my mentors, teachers, people who I disagreed with, friends, family, and to those who laid the groundwork for this show and taught me how to do it, even though indirectly, like Pat Flynn of Smart Passive Income, Abel James, Fat Burning Man, Darren Rouse of Pro Blogger. You all are awesome. I couldn't have done it without you. And I'd like to thank you and everyone else listening to this. Thank you again. I look forward to connecting. And now, my standard outro. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Modern Day Superhero Show. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit the subscribe button on iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, or wherever else you may be listening to the show. If you've got a second, please leave a quick review on iTunes. And if you think someone else you know may benefit from the show, please take a second to share it with them. You can get in touch with me on Twitter at MDSuperhero and Facebook at Modern Day Superhero 1. Better yet, you can enter your best email at moderndaysuperhero.com or text keyword superhero to 38470 and I'll send you my free newsletter. On the site, you can download all other podcast episodes I've created along with corresponding transcripts, and you can check out my blog and vlog there as well. Did you know that you can directly support the production costs of this show for as little as $1 a month? Not only that, direct sponsors are entitled to awesome additional benefits, such as ad-free shows, access to shows before they're released in iTunes, additional content, including blooper reels, and much more. For more information, check out moderndaysuperhero.com/crowdsponsor. Thank you again for listening to the show, and I hope you have a wonderful day.